Have you ever met someone who made you feel deeply connected, yet completely unsure at the same time? Someone who looked at you like you mattered, but disappeared like you didn't? Stay with this till the end, because what you're about to understand will change the way you see this connection forever. You won't just feel better, you'll finally understand what's really happening inside you and inside them. Because this is not just confusion, this is something deeper. It starts quietly. At first, everything feels right, natural, effortless. There's a pull you can't explain. Conversations flow, emotions feel intense. You feel seen in a way you haven't felt before. And for a moment, it feels like this could be something real. But then something shifts. They begin to pull away. Not suddenly, not clearly, just enough to make you question everything. Messages slow down, energy changes, their warmth turns into distance, and you're left there trying to understand what you did wrong. You replay every moment in your head, every word, every reaction. You search for answers that never come. And the most painful part, nothing actually ended. There was no clear rejection, no honest explanation, just silence and emotional distance. This is where the confusion begins to take over your mind. Because when something ends clearly, you can process it, you can grieve it, you can move on. But when something stays unclear, your mind stays attached. You start asking yourself questions that slowly destroy your peace. Did they ever really care? Was it all in my head? Why do I feel this so strongly if they don't? And without realizing it, you begin to tie your self-worth to their behavior. When they come close, you feel valued. When they pull away, you feel rejected. This emotional instability is not random. It is psychological. You are not weak for feeling this way. You are responding exactly how the human mind is wired to respond. Because unpredictability creates emotional addiction. When someone gives you attention, then takes it away, your brain starts craving it more. It starts chasing the feeling, not the person. And the more inconsistent they become, the more attached you feel. This is why it feels so hard to let go. Not because they are perfect, but because they are unpredictable. But there is another layer to this that most people don't understand. Avoidant individuals don't experience connection the same way you do. For them, closeness feels dangerous, not because they don't feel anything, but because they feel too much, and they don't know how to handle it. When things start getting real, when emotions deepen, when the connection becomes meaningful, something inside them triggers fear. Fear of losing control, fear of being dependent, fear of being vulnerable. So what do? They pull away. Not because you are not enough, but because the connection feels too real. And this is what makes it so painful for you. Because from your perspective, love means getting closer. From their perspective, love sometimes means stepping back. So you are moving toward them, while they are moving away from you. And this creates a cycle that feels impossible to break. You try harder. They distance more. You give more. They withdraw further. And slowly, without realizing it, you start losing yourself. You become more focused on their behavior than your own emotional well-being. You wait for their messages, you analyze their tone, you hold on to small moments of attention like they mean everything. And deep down, a part of you knows something is not right. But another part of you keeps holding on, because despite all the confusion, the connection still feels real, and that's what keeps you stuck. You are not chasing them. You are chasing the version of them that made you feel seen. The version that showed up in the beginning. The version that made you believe this could be something meaningful, and your mind keeps telling you, if it felt that real once, it can feel that real again. But here's the truth that most people avoid. Not every strong connection is meant to be easy. Some connections are meant to challenge you, to test your emotional strength, to force you to look at your patterns, to push you into growth you never asked for. This kind of connection is not peaceful. It is intense. It is confusing. It makes you question everything. But it also reveals something important. It shows you how much you are willing to tolerate, just to feel loved. And that realization is powerful, because the moment you start seeing this clearly, everything begins to shift. You stop blaming yourself for their distance. You stop begging for clarity. You stop shrinking just to keep them close. But right now, you are still in the middle of the confusion. Still trying to understand why something that feels so real feels so unstable. And the answer is not simple, because this is not just about love. This is about psychology. This is about emotional patterns. This is about two different ways of experiencing connection, colliding with each other. And if you don't understand this, you will keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. But once you do understand it, you won't just see them differently. You will start seeing yourself differently too, and that is where everything begins to change. So why is it that no matter how many times you try to move forward, something inside you keeps pulling you back? You tell yourself you're done. You decide to focus on your life. You try to distract your mind. You even create distance, thinking this time it will finally end. But just when you start feeling a little stronger, they reappear. A message, a reaction, a small sign. And suddenly, everything you tried to build within yourself begins to shake again. It feels like a loop you didn't choose, but somehow can't escape. This is where the connection becomes even more confusing, because it no longer feels like a choice. It starts to feel like something deeper is controlling the situation. Something invisible, yet powerful enough to bring both of you back into each other's space. And this is not accidental. There is a reason why this pattern keeps repeating itself. When someone enters your life and leaves emotional impact without closure, your mind does not register it as finished. It stays open, like an unfinished story, and the human brain is designed to seek completion. It keeps searching, replaying, analyzing, hoping for resolution. This is why you don't just forget. You remain mentally and emotionally connected, even in absence. Now add inconsistency to the situation. Moments of attention followed by absence. Warmth followed by coldness. Presence followed by silence. This creates a powerful internal reaction because the brain starts associating that person with emotional reward, but in an unpredictable way. And unpredictability strengthens attachment. It creates a craving that feels almost impossible to control. You are not just remembering them. You are waiting for the next emotional high. And that is why even when you try to step away, something inside you resists it. But there is more to this than just your side of the experience. The other person also feels this pull, even if they don't express it the way you do, even if they stay distant, even if they act like nothing affects them. The connection still exists within them, but it shows up differently when you begin to create space, when your energy shifts, when you stop reacting the same way. They feel it, not always consciously, but emotionally, and that creates discomfort inside them, because now the dynamic has changed. They are no longer in control of the distance. They are no longer sure if you will still be there, and this uncertainty triggers something within them, so they come back. Not always with clarity, not always with intention, but with just enough presence to reconnect the bond. And once that happens, the cycle restarts. You open up again. You feel hope again. You believe maybe this time things will be different. But then, without warning, the same pattern repeats. Distance returns. Silence returns. Confusion returns. And you are left wondering why something that feels so strong cannot become stable. This is the part where many people begin to doubt themselves deeply. They start thinking maybe they are too emotional, maybe they expect too much, maybe they are the reason things don't work. But the truth is, this situation is not about being too much. It is about being emotionally invested in something that lacks consistency. And consistency is what creates safety. Without safety, the mind stays alert. It keeps scanning for signs. It keeps hoping for stability, but it never fully relaxes. This is why you feel drained, even when nothing is happening, because your mind is always engaged, always thinking, always waiting. And over time, this affects your sense of reality. You begin to normalize uncertainty. You begin to accept less than what you truly need. And you convince yourself that this emotional intensity is equal to something meaningful. But intensity is not always a sign of something healthy. Sometimes it is simply a sign of imbalance. Still, despite all of this, the connection does not fade. It stays alive in small ways, in thoughts that appear without warning, in memories that feel fresh, in emotions that return without permission. And this is what makes it so difficult to understand, because even when logic tells you to move on, your feelings don't follow. It feels unfinished. It feels like there is something more. And that feeling creates a quiet hope inside you. A hope that maybe one day things will align. Maybe one day they will understand. Maybe one day everything will finally make sense. But while you are holding onto that hope, something important is happening within you. You are slowly becoming more aware. You are starting to notice the pattern. You are beginning to question what you are receiving. And this awareness is the first step toward change. Because once you see the cycle clearly, you can no longer ignore it. You start realizing that this connection is not just about emotions. It is shaping your behavior. It is influencing your choices. It is affecting how you see yourself. And this is where things begin to shift internally. You are no longer just feeling the connection. You are starting to understand it. And that understanding brings you closer to a powerful moment. A moment where you stop reacting automatically. A moment where you begin to pause. A moment where you ask yourself a different question. Not why are they like this, but why am I allowing this to continue? And that question changes everything, because now the focus is no longer on chasing answers from them. It is about facing something within yourself. And this is where the real transformation begins, because the next phase of this journey is not about the connection anymore. It is about you. And what happens next is where most people either lose themselves completely or finally find who they were meant to become. That question changes your direction completely, because now everything turns inward. You stop trying to decode their behavior and you begin to observe your own. At first, it feels uncomfortable because you start noticing things you ignored before, how much effort you were putting in, how often you were adjusting your emotions, how many times you stayed silent just to avoid losing them, and slowly a hard truth begins to surface. You were not just experiencing the connection, you were carrying it. You were holding the weight of something that was never balanced. This realization doesn't feel empowering at the beginning. It feels heavy because now you can no longer pretend that things were equal. You can no longer convince yourself that if you just tried a little more, everything would work. You see clearly now, and clarity can hurt before it heals. This is the stage where most people break internally, not because of the other person, but because of what they finally understand about themselves. You start to feel exhausted, not from loving, but from overextending, not from caring, but from caring alone. And in that exhaustion, something inside you begins to shift. You stop reacting the same way. You stop rushing to respond. You stop explaining your feelings repeatedly. You stop chasing moments of reassurance, not out of anger, but out of awareness, because now you see the pattern. You understand that every time you gave more, it didn't bring stability. It only deepened the imbalance. And for the first time, you begin to pull your energy back. This is not easy because your mind is still attached to the outcome. A part of you still hopes things will turn around. But another part of you, a stronger part, starts choosing differently. You begin to choose peace over intensity. You begin to choose clarity over confusion. You begin to choose yourself. And this is the point where everything starts to feel unfamiliar, because you are no longer acting from habit. You are acting from self-respect. You are no longer trying to secure their presence. You are protecting your own. This internal shift creates distance, not forced distance, but natural space. And this is where something interesting happens. The dynamic begins to change, because the energy you once gave freely is no longer available in the same way. The attention they were used to receiving becomes limited. The emotional access they had starts to close. And this creates a reaction. Not always immediate, not always obvious, but it happens. Because when someone senses that they are losing something they once had without effort, it triggers awareness. They begin to notice your absence in ways they didn't before. They begin to feel the difference. And that feeling is uncomfortable for them, because now the control has shifted. You are no longer chasing. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer trying to prove your value. And this is new to them, because the version of you they knew was always available. Now you are not. And this creates space for reflection on their side, a space they were avoiding before. But here is where you must be careful, because this is also the moment where many people lose their progress. The moment they sense even a small change, they go back to their old patterns. They open the door too quickly. They give access too easily. They return to the same emotional position. And the cycle repeats again. But if you stay grounded in your awareness, if you remain connected to your own value, something powerful continues to develop. You become stronger in ways you didn't expect. You begin to feel stable within yourself. You are no longer dependent on their behavior to feel okay. And this stability changes how you see everything. You are no longer impressed by temporary attention. You are no longer satisfied with inconsistency. You are no longer willing to lose yourself for the possibility of something uncertain. This is growth, not loud, not dramatic, but deep. And once this growth reaches a certain point, there is no going back. Because now, even if they return, even if they show interest, even if they try to reconnect, you are not the same person anymore. You don't respond from the same place. You don't feel the same urgency. You don't ignore the same red flags. You see everything clearly, and this clarity gives you power. Not power over them, but power over yourself. And this is the moment where the entire journey begins to transform. Because now, the outcome no longer controls you. You are no longer waiting for something to happen. You are no longer holding on to an expectation. You are standing in your own understanding. And from this place, a new phase begins. A phase where the connection is no longer the center of your world, but a reflection of what you are willing to accept. And what happens next is where everything either aligns in a new way or finally reveals what was never meant to stay. And this is where the truth finally reveals itself. Not through words, but through outcomes. Because once you reach this level of inner stability, everything becomes simple in a way it never was before. There is no more overthinking, no more emotional guessing, no more trying to force something into place. Now, reality speaks clearly. At this stage, one of two things always happens. Not sometimes, not maybe, always. Either they rise or they disappear. There is no middle ground anymore, because you are no longer meeting them from a place of need. You are meeting them from a place of self-respect, and that changes everything. If this connection truly holds depth beyond confusion, if there is something real beneath the patterns, the distance, the inconsistency, then your transformation forces a response from them. Not because you demand it, but because your absence from the old dynamic leaves no space for the same behavior to continue. They can no longer approach you casually. They can no longer give the bare minimum and still keep you. They can no longer rely on your emotional availability without offering something solid in return. And this creates pressure, a different kind of pressure, not external, but internal, because now they are faced with a decision they avoided before. Step forward or lose access completely. And this is where real change becomes possible. Not through your effort, not through your patience, but through your withdrawal from what no longer aligns. If they are capable of growth, they begin to confront themselves. They begin to question their patterns. They begin to recognize what they pushed away. They begin to feel the weight of your absence in a way they never allowed themselves to before. And slowly, their actions start to reflect something different. More consistency, more presence, more intention. Not perfectly, not instantly, but noticeably. Because now they understand something they didn't understand before. You are no longer guaranteed. And that realization can awaken something deep inside them. But here is the most important part. Even if they come back changed, you are no longer the same person who once waited. You don't fall back into old habits. You don't ignore what you learned. You don't accept half effort disguised as progress. You stand firm in what you now know you deserve. And this creates a new kind of connection, one that is no longer based on confusion, but built on clarity, one that is no longer driven by emotional highs and lows, but grounded in stability. And if both sides meet at this level, then yes, something real can finally begin. Not the version you imagined in the beginning, but something stronger, something healthier, something that exists because both individuals faced themselves and chose growth over fear. But if that shift does not happen, if they remain distant, if they continue the same patterns, if they do not rise to meet you where you stand now, then the second outcome unfolds, and this one is just as powerful. You let go. Not out of pain, not out of frustration, but out of clarity. Because now you see the truth without distortion. You understand that connection alone is not enough. You understand that feelings without action lead nowhere. You understand that staying attached to potential only delays your own growth. And this understanding sets you free, completely, because you are no longer holding on to what could be. You are grounded in what is. And what is finally makes sense. There is no more waiting for change. There is no more hoping for different behavior. There is no more emotional dependence on their presence. You move forward, stronger, clearer, more aligned with yourself. And the most powerful part of this entire journey is this: in both outcomes, you win. If they grow, you meet them from a place of strength. If they don't, you walk away with your self-worth intact. There is no loss anymore, only evolution. Because what felt like confusion in the beginning was actually a process designed to show you something deeper than the connection itself. It was never just about them. It was about you becoming someone who no longer accepts uncertainty as love, someone who no longer chases validation, someone who understands their value without needing it to be confirmed by another person. And once you reach this level, everything changes, not just in this connection, but in every connection that comes after. Because now, you don't look for intensity, you look for alignment, you don't look for emotional highs.